But I know, like, these are some of the companies
some of my closest friends.
Yeah, some of the companies that you've gotten into litigation with just in the last year. I think Google's one of them. How first of all, how are those companies supposed to know? How would you advise an entrepreneur to know that you?
So those companies have a policy of not looking. So if you go to a big company, which could check, the patents are the most public of all documents. Anybody who wants to can search the patent files. They're all online. And anybody who wants to can search the patent filings and see, are we practicing something which somebody else has invented, in which case we probably ought to contact them and get a license,
right?
Or are we not?
Right.
Most large companies have a policy of not looking.
Right.
It's a policy. They're not allowed to look.
Right.
Now, why is that policy? Well, the reason that policy exists is because if you intentionally infringe a patent, you are liable for triple damages. But if you unintentionally infringe a patent, you're only liable.
They're playing by the rules.
Single damages. So let me see if I get this
right. Right.
If we don't look,
that's a stupid.
We pay less.
That's one area for.
We're not looking.
That's one area for reform. That's just a stupid policy, right?
That's the law.
Right.
Okay.
No, I know.
So now you have another problem. Patents are granted by people who work in a place called the Patent Office. Now, the vast majority of the people in the Patent Office are wonderful people. But the people in the Patent Office who actually do the job of granting patents are called examiners. All right? And they're people who read the applications and then decide, following some fairly formal rules, whether or not your invention, as described, meets the test of whether you should be given a patent. Well, it turns out there's a problem with patent examiners. They're not given much time to decide.
Yeah, there are not a lot of them.
Yeah, well, no, that's not the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Okay, there's not a lot of them, so you wait 3 to 5 years before they even pick up your invention.
Right.
Really good for innovation. Okay, right? But that's not your biggest problem. The problem is that very few of them are born in America. Almost all the patent examiners are foreign. They don't speak English as their native language. That's a real problem when they're examining English language patents. Okay? In addition, the Patent Office does not typically distinguish itself terribly well in new fields. When you have a whole new field, the Patent Office has to get experts, whereas if it's chemistry, there are some amazing chemists who are examiners in the Patent Office. But when it came to business and internet innovations, there were nobody in the Patent Office who knew business innovations or internet.
Right.
So in the electrical apparatus unit of the Patent Office, that's the unit, the unit that does these things, there was nobody who understood anything. So here's what happened. A lot of very bad described inventions that should have never been granted patents were indeed granted patents, right? Because these guys had no time. They're all guys. They had no time to do their job. They had no experience, and English was not their native language.
Right.
So, and they got paid, and they got paid to stamp yes, yes, yes. So people like Fred Wilson, who are phenomenally talented and good people, are really saying, hey, Jay, there are thousands of these crap patents out there that are attacks on our innovation. All kinds of patents have been issued by our government that should never have been issued. We can't litigate every one of these patents because they're presumed to be valid on issuance. The patent system is so broken that even though you may have done real invention, I'm sorry, the people who haven't have gummed up these works, and so all patents have to be considered under the same rubric of tax on innovation. That's not true. It's a bit like blaming knife manufacturers for all knife murders.
Okay.
Knives are good things if used in kitchens. They're bad things if used on streets. Okay. So, I'm sorry
Jay,
that I have these inventions.
I understand that. I understand that. So you're saying, hey, bad actors have created terrible patents using a bad system. Walker Digital's a good actor among
we're real inventors. We've spent $100+ million of our own money really inventing stuff. We've brought products to market. We've created tens of thousands of jobs. We've actually done something. We've approached all these companies early on and said, license our inventions from us. You're practicing our inventions, Citibank. You're practicing our invention, Google. Here it is in black and white. And you know what they say? Sue us. And we said, no, we don't want to sue you. Here, just read it in black and white. We've invented this. Here's our priority date. We're not even going to talk to you if you don't sue us. No. What do you mean you're not going to talk to us if you don't sue us? Look, if you don't sue us, you're not serious, and we don't have to pay you. There's no reason to pay you anything, right? Even though you invented it, too tough bad. Sue us, and then we'll start to talk to you.
So
okay, I'll meet you in court.
So let me try. So because you can't comment on hypotheticals, I just want to try one last question before we move on to TEDMED. Let's say that I have a service, a web service, and I apply, on my web service, you're allowed to create some metadata to describe a given image. And then that image, that data that's created, can be searched by participants on the web service to find that image or other images like it. That is commonly described today in web lingo as a tag. And that is what Flickr invented, sort of by accident, when they were starting a game that became a photo sharing service. Today, tags are on Facebook, on Pinterest, on Tumblr, on just about Instagram, just about any other social media company that's been created, because it's become this kind of a process through which it makes content easier to find.
Tags are a solution to a problem invented by somebody.
Yes, correct. There is no patent on that solution.
They basically didn't patent it.
They chose not to patent it.
No, they wasn't a choice, trust me. Some moron didn't patent it if he invented it. Okay?
Well,
did he invent it?
Yes.
Then
yes,
he's a moron.
Okay. So he's a moron in the following way.
He could have patented and given it to the world, but he would have had the optionality. Here,
he would have had optionality.
The Excel
That's your
spreadsheet
point.
was invented by Lotus 123 or whomever. Right. I think it was invented actually down the street here. The guy who invented the spreadsheet could have patented it. He could have chosen to give it to the world, but patented it.
But there's costs associating, as you say, time and money.
Yeah, but he could have patented it.
You just said it's
he
time
could have
and
patented
money.
And he could have charged a very reasonable and small royalty to anybody who used his patent. He could have sold it for $500 a license, and everybody would have paid him $500.
But smart people have pointed out it's not that easy to identify. There's no marketplace for all of these patents. One of the things that surprises me is that your portfolio, and it's not everybody's portfolio is not easily accessible, so that there's a liquid marketplace for
That's correct, but that doesn't argue. Here, there's nothing wrong with inventing things and not patenting them. It happens all the time, right? If you want to do that, fantastic. There's nothing wrong with inventing things and paying the cost, let's say it's an average of $100,000, to seek a patent if you've really invented something, and then hope to recover some of your economic costs of inventing, including your risk costs, because you're going to have a lot of failures in the world that have to be paid for by something. So we've done a lot of failures in the world, but the things that we've patented that have succeeded have helped us pay for our failures.
Okay,
that's how the world works.
Okay, so let me ask one final question, just because of the structure of the patent industry today. Facebook is preparing to go public, should go public in the next 30 days, intending to raise $10 billion. $10 billion. Last week or 2 weeks ago, they spent $650 million on a patent portfolio with AOL. They've already spent another couple $100 million on top of that as they try to fight off whatever litigation might be coming their way. It began with Yahoo. Is that the best deployment of economic resources in terms of value creation for the economy at large? Or
absolutely.
You believe that it is?
Absolutely.
Okay,
if you don't, because ultimately, as inventors, we risk capital and resources and time. When we invent something that turns out to be useful, there is absolutely no reason we shouldn't get an economic rent for that invention. The fact that other companies want to copy our stuff, how nice. How about if I want to copy your books that you write? Do you want me to be able to do that? How about if I want to copy something you work?
Okay, let's not confuse copyright with software.
Copyright is intellectual property. It's just another piece of intellectual property. There's no reason why a well-run, logical, intelligent intellectual property system doesn't make the economy stronger, not weaker. Now, like anything else, a poorly run one is going to have net negative effects along with net positive effects.
Could that be happening now?
Well, let's take a look at the drug industry. Do you think patents are good or bad for drugs?
So I think that's a really. Do you think we need a sector specific?
Do you think India has a drug industry?
I think.
Why is there no drug industry in India?
Right. So I think the answer to this question.
There you go.
I think the answer to this question. Well, that's a little bit unfair, Jay. Right?
Look, there's no patent protection in India.
It's a little bit unfair to say that the drug industry, which has obviously enormous development costs relative to the software industry,
so we're going to pick the industries we like development costs, but the internet doesn't seem like it has a lot of development costs. So the fact that I've spent $100 million of development costs, that doesn't matter. But the fact that the drug industry does it, are you going to start picking winners like that?
So what I am suggesting is clearly there are ramifications for Walker Digital. I don't know what the solutions are, but I was curious.
I think property is a good idea.
Okay, well, we're going to leave it at that. Needless to say, we could go on and on with this. I want to come back. You've built this extraordinary library, and I want to show people about that. These are some images of the library. This is a library of human imagination that you've created, which I guess is just adjacent or part of your home.
It's part of my home.
Part of your home. It has unbelievable artifacts in it. And we're going to see some of those now.
Here it is. All of imagination, everything we think, we feel, we sense comes through the human brain. And once we create new patterns in this brain, once we shape the brain in a new way, it never returns to its original shape. This is the library of human imagination. In the glass panels, all along is sort of the history of imagination. There is a glass bridge that you walk across that's suspended in space, so it's a leap of imagination. So how do we create? And part of the question that I've answered is we create by surrounding ourselves with stimuli, with human achievement, with history, with the things that drive us and make us human. So here's the secret. You become what you imagine. I'll say it again. You become what you imagine.
You become what you imagine, this imagination thing runs very core through all of your work. Talk a little bit about when did the library begin? Did it, how did it come to be, and how has it informed the last 5 or 7 years of your life?
The library's about 25 years old, so.
Okay.
I've always had a deep interest in history, and I've always had a love of books. So those two things came together. My work is to invent, primarily. So when you're an inventor, you study a lot of history. At least I think when you're a good inventor, you study a lot of history. And when you're living in the modern time, it turns out that imagination is probably one of the most, if not the most important skill that you can build. Your ability to imagine new ways of approaching problems, your ability to imagine new solutions to current problems is probably never been has never been more highly valued than it now in history. So for most of human history, you're put to death if you have imagination. Only at the beginning of the Renaissance does imagination start to have some value and start to be positively selected for. So the imagination has a very strong role to play in my work, and also in my personal passion. So I began collecting books across a variety of fields about 25 years ago.
So it began with books.
Yeah, it began with books, and then it grew from there. So I slowly built a collection of things that I felt related to the history of human imagination along various lines, and then it grew into a library, and then you saw some images of the library.
The library really started as a library of really purely books.
It really started as my own personal collection of historical books and manuscripts and maps related to things that I felt were interesting. Things that I felt were interesting happened to generally be about imagination.
You took a very deep dive along the way into the intersection of anatomy, art, science. That's all part of the library.
Yeah, I didn't do anything deep there. There are 3 or so vectors of human imagination that go way back. So one is the night sky, so images, constellations, that there's always been a very strong element of human imagination related to objects in the night sky. Why are the stars in the patterns they are? Why does the planet seem to move in the sky the way they do? So that goes back to ancient times. There's a vector of human imagination that goes back to where we come from, sort of the spirituality, the myths of, where did we come from, the Adam and Eve, the Gilgamesh myth, things like that. So those, where we come from has been a vector. And then there's been a section of human of imagination that's sort of how does the machine, the body operate? this thing. You know, what is this thing we inhabit, and how does it work, and what's going on in it? And there's been this, you know, long history of human imagination. The rest of the vectors of human imagination are relatively modern, you know, science, technology, things like military. Military imagination goes back, but not as far as you'd think. So I have an interest in the history of imagination, therefore I have an interest in human anatomy as one dimension, one very long vector of human imagination.
Okay.